very narrow range, but then the ardor about all net stocks has cooled in the last month. Joining us now to tell us more about his business is George Garrick. He's chairman and CEO of Flycast Communications. Mr. Garrick, thanks for being with us.
My pleasure. Thanks.
Could you describe the difference between your company and others? I've heard this description before, just attached to different names,
Right.
network of sites and things like that. What makes you special?
Well, the primary difference is we are not a sales agent. We are not primarily a sales agent for the website. What we do is we make a market in unsold advertising space. 75% of all the advertising space on the internet goes unsold. We use that as a source of generic ad space, which we make available for advertisers that are looking for a means to reach a large number of people at a very low cost. And this appeals to direct marketers and what we call response advertisers, who are advertisers that are not interested in a branding or a sponsorship goal, but are interested in driving traffic to their websites and generating leads, building customer traffic, and so forth.
Are you an agency, or are you actually engaged in the physical delivery of the ads?
We are a network. We're an aggregator, so we aggregate the space across what's now almost 1,000 sites. We sell that to advertisers, and then we also manage all the technology for implementing, planning, and running and evaluating the advertising campaign. So in that sense, we function like other networks, but the business model is very buyer-centric in that we're focusing on the interests of the buyer, which is trying to get the best possible value and the highest return per dollar, as opposed to focusing on the interests of the seller, which are interested in representing as a sales agent the properties that the websites are trying to market.
We'll be right back with more. Don't go away. We are talking with George Garrick. He is chairman and CEO of Flycast Communications. So the difference between you and a DoubleClick is they represent the seller, you're a buyer's rep.
Well, we're not exactly a buyer's rep. We are buyer-centric. So our first obligation is to the buyer. We're trying to secure for the buyer advertising that reaches a lot of people, that has exceptional value for response-oriented advertisers. That is, advertisers that are looking for a measurable return that is based on a consumer taking action when they see the ad. By doing so, we create a market for ad space that would otherwise go unsold. So by taking a buyer-centric view, we're creating a marketplace for sites that have excess inventory to sell where that space would otherwise go unsold.
You said something very interesting earlier. 75% of web advertising space goes unsold?
Right. The web is the only medium where the more people use it, the more ad space is created. If more people watch television during an hour, it doesn't create more ad spots. But there's been such a huge growth in internet traffic in the last few years that has created a huge surplus of advertising inventory. So it's the only medium where you have an excess of inventory to that degree.
As the web becomes more mainstream, though, don't you eventually get squeezed out of business because there's less and less unsold inventory lying around?
Well, the percentage of unsold inventory will decrease over time, but it's estimated that even 10 years from now, over half of all inventory will be unsold. So
Let's talk about your stock for a minute. Stock comes out, tremendous volatility, huge profit, and loses most of that profit in a short period of time. Who owns your stock when you went on the road shows? Was it institutional investors, online investors themselves? And how do you go about placing a value on whether the stock is cheap at 25 or 37?
Well, we were mostly, at least in the initial distribution, was mostly institutional. It was about 70% institutional. We were actually pretty pleased with the way the stock has behaved. We priced aggressively. We didn't want to leave any money on the table. We initially filed at about a $15 range. We ended up pricing at $25, closed only a few dollars above that. But in the last few weeks, we've really held our value well. So we actually feel that we played it as well as it could have been played. As far as who's to say what what is or isn't the appropriate value, I wouldn't know. I mean, that's what the market's for.
But you're convinced they're mostly institutional investors who understand your company and who are buying it for a 3 or 4 or 5 year play as opposed to a trade?
We believe that's the case. We don't actually know who sold and who still holds, but we believe that's the case. And based on the low volumes that we've generally experienced, we still feel that we are mostly institutional.
Mr. Garrick, thanks a lot. Appreciate it. George
My
Garrick.
pleasure. Thank you.
He's chairman and CEO at Flycast Communications. All right, Alina Cho now is going to bring us an update on that